Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly. Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast. I'm your host, Steve Creasy, and joining me today is the co-host of the show, the owner of PackYourPixieDust.com Travel. How you doing today, Christy?
I'm good, thanks.
And we have a special guest back on, and it's always fun to talk to him. He's the owner of Touring Plans, the co-author of the Unofficial Guide series,
Mr. Len Testa. But
before we jump into kind of our discussion today, there's a lot of rumors floating around the web the last week or so. You just recently got off the Magic on your way from New York City to Ottawa, and there's been a lot of speculation that the real reason you were up there was working on a new algorithm to come up with a new lines program for all of our neighbors up north to navigate their Tim Hortons a little bit easier.
Converting it all to metric. It was to Quebec. So I will tell you my Quebec story. So like I'm standing in a corner in Quebec, and the pedestrian crosswalks are different in Quebec in that everybody crosses in both directions at the same time. Uh-huh. So like in some streets, like one street goes, then the next signal it's whoever's 90 degrees to that. Goes. But in Canada, everyone walks at the same time, which I guess makes it easier to figure out where the pedestrians are going. But, the sign that counts down how many seconds you have left to go. Uh-huh. So it starts at like 25 and it's counting down. And we're like a group of people from the cruise ship. And it's starting with 25. And Laurel asks me, I think we started walking at like 17. I'm like, yeah, Laurel said, do you think we can make it? And I said, yeah, but remember 17 is like 12 seconds in American. It's metric. So we have to hurry. And no one laughed. I'm sad. But anyway, yeah, it was a great trip. So go ahead. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so why this cruise? Why did you want to go on this one?
Two reasons. One, I've never been to Quebec City before, and it was on my bucket list. I know, dream big, Len. But number two, I'm trying to go through the real world and find everything in World Showcase that exists in the real world. So I've been to Norway to find like the Stave Church and, all the stuff from there, and found Aztec pyramids in Mexico. And, I've been to England and Italy and, all those places. So the Canada Pavilion, the in Epcot, the main building is the Hotel Chateau Frontenac. And so since it was in Quebec City, I wanted to go see it. But not only that, but it's actually reasonable to stay there. It's not too expensive. So the last night when we got off our cruise, we actually stayed there one night. So another check on the box on my bucket list of seeing everything in real life that exists in World Showcase.
That's awesome. What do you have left?
Germany, China, Japan, and Morocco.
How was the hotel? Those hotels are amazing up there. I've stayed at the Chateau Lake Louise up in Banff, and I'm not sure if it's associated with that one, but I know they have a whole string of hotels that are just amazing up there like that one.
It's a Fairmont property. Yeah, it was fantastic. Luxurious by any standard. We stayed club level. The club level was, I would say better than any club level in any Disney hotel. It was really magnificent. The views are fantastic. Service is excellent. It is a massive hotel. True story. They actually have a restaurant there called Le Cellier. I know, right? Took a picture. Check.
Did you eat there?
Didn't. So we had 2 food tours booked. Sorry, we had 1 food tour booked on the one day that we were there, but it was 18 food items. Oh. I was kind of done after that. And then the next night, Laurel had, of all things, a craving for pasta in Quebec. So we did that. But Quebec is beautiful. It was a lot of fun. It reminds me a lot of Brighton, England. So small, narrow streets, lots of alleys, lots of small, non-brand, non-chain shops where people are making their own things. A lot of good food. So if you've ever been to England, it's like that, but with, French-speaking Canadians. So everyone was universally polite. Yeah, but it was fantastic. Weather was cool but not cold. So it was like 60 degrees. It rained sort of the first day, but we walked around about half of the old town, and then we walked 2 miles into Quebec City proper, past all the big government buildings and out into the residential areas. Whenever I go to a new country, and especially to big cities in new countries, the first thing I always want to do is go to the grocery store to see how people like shop, right? Because you can tell a lot about people by what they eat, right? So did you guys know that in Canada milk is sold in bags, not cartons?
No.
I did not know that.
Yes. So milk is sold in 3-pack bags. So my latest research endeavor is to try and figure out why. As far as I can tell, it was an environmental thing back in the 70s. But yeah, so it takes up less space, it takes up less paper and stuff. So yeah.
Was that your first time in Canada?
No, I've been to Canada a million times. But the first time I sort of was in So normally when I go, I'm in Toronto, where I'm just eating in restaurants, or Vancouver, where I'm eating in restaurants.
Right.
Yeah. So, but this is let's go and see how people shop. So yeah, bags. Also, ketchup flavored potato chips, which I knew about, but we're sort of like, apparently they're addictive. I was telling my twin sister about it, and she was like, "Oh, I've had them, and you need to bring back whatever the NAFTA agreement will allow you to import, in one time." So yeah, she likes them quite a bit. But it was great. So our itinerary was New York to Halifax. Getting on to New York was interesting because I don't know if the DCL has sailed out of New York very many times. We were in boarding group 1. It took us a good 20 minutes, maybe more, to get on the ship after we had, like you post for photos.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then you scan your card, you check your passport, you get all your boarding documents, you go up the gangway. But once we got past all the photos, to actually get on the ship was 20 some minutes. And I don't know what happened there. And then it was and our stateroom wasn't ready until 2:00 instead of, 1 or 1. So I don't know what happened there, whether it was just everything was running late, people were getting off late or whatever. But once we got on, it was fantastic. The ship looks really good. I hadn't been on the Magic in about 2 years. Carpet looks great. Everything looks really good. It was first time eating at Rapunzel's.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that and your thoughts.
I liked it. So I think the food is improved over Parrot Key. God bless its soul. And then it was Carioca's, right?
Yes.
I actually liked the Carioca's menu. But it wasn't as themed as it was. Basically, let's paint the parrots a different color and we'll call it Carioca's. The Tangled is completely different. I love the show where they have the gang come out. What are they? They're Vikings? Or what are they?
Thuggos.
The Thuggos, yeah. They come out. But they actually sit at individual tables and tell jokes. So, they do the song, I Have a Dream. And so one of the Thuggos came and sat at our table and asked Laurel what her dream was. And she said something. And then they asked me what my dream was. And I said, well, my dream is sitting right across from me. And it was Laurel, right? And then the guy holds up a menu and he does this fake whisper and he says, if she's holding you for ransom, blink twice to where everyone can hear. It was hysterical. I was like, oh, you guys have this down pat. It was a lot of fun. Rapunzel's was very good.
I thought the Thuggos were amazing. I like that show better than when it was Flynn Rider and Rapunzel, just because of the comedy effect of it.
Yeah, it was good.
I think that based on other podcasts, you knew a bunch of people, or at least a handful of people on the cruise. Did you sit with them, or did everybody sort of do their own thing, and there were just people you knew on the cruise?
There were a lot of people I knew on the cruise. Ricky Niblett from the Beer Guest podcast was on. They had a different dining time than us, and so we did late dining and they did early dining. But we saw them, basically every day. That was fun. And there were a few other people that I sort of knew on the cruise as well. And then there were people who found me who I didn't know. So we were boarding the ship and someone stopped and asked for photos, and that's always fun, but unexpected. They signed a few autographs.
You're a Disney celebrity.
If there was such a thing. Yeah, it doesn't happen a lot. It doesn't happen every day, but yeah, a few times. People stopped and asked for photos or just to say hi and stuff like that. And it's always cool to talk to people who are Disney fans too. So that was good.
Did you have other people at your table?
No, we didn't. And that was weird because they originally gave us a table for 8.
Oh, with just 2 of you?
Well, so the first night we went to Palo, and it was great. But the second night we sat down and we're at a table for 8, and we're waiting around for everyone else to come. And eventually they said, yeah, no one but you. And so there were only 1,800 people total on the cruise, and there were not very many kids. And we were at the second seating. So I think that had something to do with it.
I was going to kind of ask you about that before we actually jump into the ports. When I saw this cruise come out, I was pretty excited about it. I wish we could have made it work. Our kids are in school, so it wasn't going to work for us, but I'd love to do it. Next year, they've completely dropped it. Do you see them doing this again? It seemed like it was a cruise that was hard for them to fill because they definitely had Canadian rates, military rates advertised throughout several months prior. So do you have any thoughts on that?
I think they've only got one Canada cruise next year, which is a shame because this itinerary is fantastic. Starting in Nova Scotia and Halifax, we went to Saguenay, Baie-Comeau, and then Quebec City. And every city was better than the next. It was great. I would totally do that exact itinerary in that way again.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you did in each one of the ports, or some of the things that stood out?
So Halifax is basically Boston, but American. So larger city on the coast, a lot of fishing stuff. For there, we walked around town. I think we bought as many Canadian candy bars as we could hold, as we could carry, and then we brought them back to the ship. We were staying concierge, so we shared them with the concierge staff to hand out to kids and stuff. So shout out to the Magic's concierge staff. They were all fantastic as well. And it was also sort of like gray that day, not really raining, but it wasn't great weather. The big draw that they seemed to like push in Halifax was the graveyard for some of the folks from the Titanic.
Oh.
A little morbid. But Halifax was fine. It's like any big town, right? So it's got like a Lululemon and Subways and Tim Hortons and colleges and stuff like that. It was fun to walk around. It was also good to get off the ship because we had a sea day before that. Things got interesting when we started getting into the smaller towns. So the next was Saguenay, which is the metropolitan area is like about 140,000 people, but it's a small town. Like that would incorporate like all of the towns around it. I think it's probably like 25,000 just for Saguenay. And that was interesting because they sent out the townsfolk to meet us in their traditional dress. It was the first time the Magic had ever been to Saguenay. And there was this receiving line of it's got to be over 100 people, all dressed up in traditional dress. But also the kids had the day off from school, apparently, because it was that big of a deal. And the kids were holding, Mickey Mouse white gloves. Mm-hmm. They were holding huge cutouts of those, like giant 4 feet across, ones on the shore of the river. And they were waving them to us as we arrived. And then there were hundreds and hundreds of families in the park next to the port who were there just to see a ship this big come in. But the town had apparently the night before started showing continuous Mickey Mouse cartoons in a little outdoor theater they set up right by the port. So people were out there watching Mickey Mouse cartoons, and the ship was in, and it was dancing and singing, and everyone was greeting us and shaking hands as we were getting off the ship. It was fantastic. So we walked around Saguenay, went to the grocery stores, found the bagged milk and stuff. But it was great to see how people live. Laurel got to practice her French. I got to practice my polite nodding and saying I don't understand. It was all good. We walked around, I would say, for about 4 hours, and we walked a good 3 or 4 miles into town and back, both looking at grocery stores. And then my thing was, as we were going to Quebec, was I was trying to buy a T-shirt from the local hockey team. Oh. In every town, and I couldn't find a sporting goods store in Saguenay. So mental note, next time I'm in Saguenay, look this up ahead of time. It was really nice. Saguenay everyone was super friendly. Everyone was nice. Loved the town. Would totally go back and spend some time there. Then we backed up and went to Baie-Comeau. So if Saguenay is like 25,000 people, Baie-Comeau is 9,000 people. Tiny Canadian, literally town. They have literally one main street that you could roll down Main Street and not get hurt. It's that small. Like, it is not a large main street. Maybe it's like a block. But the interesting thing about that was there were a ship the size of Disney Magic has never docked there before. It was so large that the town had to cancel school to give us school buses to port people from the port to the middle of downtown, which was about a mile. So everybody had the day off from school. I would not be surprised if everyone had the day off from work just to go see the ship, because there were that many people out. So, a bunch of kids in the parks playing. We walked up and down, the downtown, and we walked actually as far through town as we could, sort of looking at different house styles and architecture and things like that. Bought some lemonade from some people. We found a photo of the hockey team mascot and got a photo with them. They are the Baie-Comeau Dracars.
Oh, nice.
All right. What did we do? Did we eat there or not? No, I don't think we ate. Laurel wanted cabanas, I think. But we spent, again, 3-4 hours walking around there. It's lovely. It's a small Canadian town. Nothing wrong with it at all. Would totally go back and hang out for a day or two if I could. Then we had a sea day, and then we stayed at Quebec and then overnighted in Quebec. So in Quebec, we did a food tour, which totally the best shore excursion to get. It's a food tour. We stopped at 5 different restaurants over the course of 3 hours, had 18 different things to eat, including seal.
Wow.
I know, right? kind of cliche, but it was fantastic.
Is Laurel a vegan?
She was. So she did not obviously eat the non-vegan stuff, but there were plenty of options for lots of people on it. They made sure that they could accommodate lots of things. So, mushroom soups and stuff like that. The seal was interesting. So apparently when they try and do sausage in Quebec, because it doesn't get very warm and there's a lot of humidity from the river, it's a different curing process for cheeses and meats. So we learned something there. But the big thing my favorite thing was at the end of the tour, they brought us to have maple syrup lollipops. So you take maple syrup and you pour it on a slab of ice or snow. And then you take a wooden stick and you wrap the solidifying maple syrup around it, basically like a lollipop. So for $2 Canadian, which is $1.60 US, they give us basically a fist-sized sample of solidified maple syrup. I needed like a teaspoon of that, and that was good. Yeah. I was like, it's basically it's sugar, right? It's frozen sugar. There's not. I don't know that I could eat an entire fist-sized thing of it, and I wasn't ready to try. But it was really good. It was a great dessert. I would, again, totally do that again. And then what else did we do? Again, walked around all of Quebec, walked up into the new part of town, walked around all the old town. We saw about half of, I would say, old Quebec. But that's definitely the way to do the itinerary. Start in New York and go to Quebec. Because if you're going backwards, the cities would get, I hate to say this, but less interesting as you go along. You know what I mean? It's like that particular sequence of cities was good. I don't know that I would want to start in Quebec and end in Halifax. That sounds horrible, but
that makes sense.
Wasn't. Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of cool. I hope that they continue to do. I mean, I know they're not doing it next year, like you said. I looked it up. They do only have the one, and it's only a 5-day cruise that goes out of New York up into Canada. But I hope they kind of keep pushing the envelope a little bit more as they kind of go forward with cruises like this, because I think that's kind of neat to be able to do some different itineraries like you did.
It was great. It was totally worth it. So the concierge team was great. Food was excellent everywhere we went. It was all very good.
One other quick question for you on this one. I know you like to keep wildlife outside of your balcony rather than coming in from a previous show. But we did a show on Alaska last night. I was just wondering, is this the type of cruise where you're going to see a lot of wildlife too? Did you see much?
We saw more in Alaska. We saw whales several times. And I think the staff said that as they were coming down from the transatlantic crossing, as they got to Canada, they had seen whales and dolphins or porpoises as well. We saw whales right off the ship, and they were big. So that was fun. I think we saw more actual wildlife, though, on Alaska. So in Alaska, we saw not only whales, but as you were going down through the fjords, you would see goats or elk or whatever on the mountains. So I think we saw a little bit more wildlife there. But on the other hand, we in Alaska, we tended to hike the national parks nearby. So we were also able to, we were in the natural setting and able to see more things there too. So again, a huge shout out to Andy, Kamisha, and Emanuela from the concierge staff. They are super awesome people, all super nice and all very knowledgeable. We were walking around, so we're in I think it was Saguenay. And Laurel and I were walking for an hour. We got the ship, pretty early. We had been walking for an hour. We're in the middle of some obscure residential area, and who turns the corner but Andy, our concierge? And I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? Right? We're literally the only people we can see in this residential area of this small Canadian town. And he's like, I like to get off the ship and see the area so that I can explain to guests what the town is like and where to go and what to see. So I've been to the church and I've been to the coffee shop and I've been to the chocolatier. I'm like, Andy, did you swim off the ship? Because we've been docked for half an hour. How did you do all this? He's like, yeah, I like to get around. I walk fast. All right. So anyway, yeah, it was great fun to hang out with the team there, and they're all super nice people. So
it's awesome to see the lengths that they go to kind of provide that information for their guests, right?
Every time we were going down some weird back alley in Quebec, it's like, okay, who from the concierge team are we going to see now, right?
Yeah.
It's great.
Did you have the? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Did you have a family veranda or the one bedroom?
We had the one bedroom.
Okay.
We had the one bedroom. And it was nice. The interesting thing about the concierge on the Magic is the lounges. So we're on deck 8. The lounge is on deck 10. Whereas the last time I had stayed, the last concierge that we had done was on the Dream, and I believe it's on deck 12, and our room was on deck 12 as well. So we got a couple of flights of stairs to go up and down to the lounge. It's not a big deal. I liked deck 8 because it wasn't too many decks up or down to go anywhere, and I definitely didn't feel like. So Laurel has this thing where we never go on elevators on a cruise. We have to take the stairs all the time. So literally did not take the elevator on the cruise. And normally on certain ships, by the third or fourth day, I'm exhausted, right? We're literally doing 100 flights of stairs a day, right? Because Laurel wants to see the ship and move around, and she's doing some Fitbit challenge while we're on the ship. So it's got to get the calories going anyway. So but deck 8 seemed great. It wasn't too much walking up or down, for anything. It was good. The one thing I will say is it's directly below deck 9 where the people do the sunning. Yeah, so you could hear during the day and the night all the stuff moving around on the deck.
Did you have one of the midship cabins?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So 8048 was our cabin.
I'm curious what your thoughts were on the shower, and especially Laurel, because I think she is more my height-ish, and I think the showers would be the same as on the Wonder. And I was like, we'll never book that cabin again, which is an awful first world problem to have. But like the shower head wouldn't move. And so it would just come and hit you right in the face. And that was like the only location it would have.
So the one bedrooms have 2 showers.
Right.
All had the main bathroom. I had the one on the side. On mine, the shower head did not move. And the interesting thing was like I had the second bathroom on the Dream when we had the one bedroom as well. And that water pressure was amazing. Like you could feel you could pressure wash with that, right, if you wanted to. On this one it was fine, but it wasn't like on the Dream, I thought, getting into the shower, like this is going to be some of the best, 10 minutes that I have all day just in the shower, right? This is my happy place.
Hey.
On the Wonder, it was fine. I mean, it was an acceptable shower. It wasn't, good or bad. It was fine, whatever it was.
So did the shower head move though in the main?
No,
bedroom?
it did not move, and that was a weird thing because like the way it was angled, the water, if I wasn't in the shower, the water would hit at the corner where the shower curtain met the wall. And so like you've got to do this thing where you get the wall a little bit wet, then you stick the shower curtain to it so that the water doesn't run out. It was fine. It didn't leak or anything. It was just, I wished it could have been a little bit more able to be positioned. We did the rainforest package, by the way, for the spa. And I will say that the showers in the spa are all very good.
Yes.
What I haven't done yet is sit down and think about, for the money. Laurel is good in that she doesn't tell me what these things cost until we get back. So to think about it while I'm on the ship. Like,
did you book it when an opening day?
If not opening day, it was very close. Like we had this plan for over a year.
Okay, so speaking about opening day, we were kind of talking about it before the show, or before we started recording here. You said the last day you were on the ship as you're getting off, the 2020 pricing was released for the winter going on into the spring. Any thoughts on that? Have you guys taken a look at that yet, as how the pricing is coming out compared to, and I know it's always going up, but any thoughts on that one?
The thing I was interested in 2 things, and to see the 2020 thing is, one, where are the ships going to be after the new ships start coming online? Right. So what's going out of Port Canaveral, what's going out of Miami, and where are the other ships going? It looks like at least through 2020, Disney's still trying to figure out where the smaller ships are going to be based. So that's why I think we see New Orleans as a test market. Mm-hmm. I think we all agree Galveston is not the most glamorous port to depart out of.
Right. It's like difficult to get to. The itineraries aren't ideal. It's great if you're in Texas. I think that's where that ends.
Even then, because Galveston is like 2 hours from Houston, and Texas is a big state.
Very big.
So even if you live in the middle, if you live in Dallas or Fort Worth, you're still flying somewhere, to get there. It was,
and then you have to take an hour transfer that is not that easy to come by to get to the port. Yeah, I feel like they need to do more for that port. All the cruise lines.
I think New Orleans is an acceptable compromise there. It's it's still in the Gulf, and there's obviously more things you can do in New Orleans, either pre or post trip as well. So I think they're testing out where they're going to go. I think based on what I've heard, the Port of Miami has agreed to take a Dream class ship going forward. So I expect either one of the new ships, because the new ships are going to be Dream class ships, right? They're about the size of the Dream.
Yes.
So either the Dream or the Fantasy or one of the new ships will be based in Miami. 2 of the new ships will be based out of Port Canaveral, because Port Canaveral said that Disney's got 2 liquid natural gas ships that are going to be based there. So the 3 new ships will all be LNG powered. So then the big question is like, which of the Dream class ships is not going to be at those places, either Miami or Port Canaveral? Where's it going to be? And then what happens to the other ships? So, is it going to go to Europe? Is it going to go to the West Coast? I'd heard, and I would expect to see this based on the itineraries, that they're going to keep testing the Wonder doing West Coast itineraries. And I think the Magic, you might see doing more European itineraries. So the idea is that you do the Southern California and Mexico and Southern Europe during the winter, and then Northern Europe / Alaska stuff during summer. So that was interesting. The other thing, have you seen the news about Lighthouse Point in the Bahamas?
Yes.
When Disney gets these new ships, at some point, most of them are going to be based in Florida, for whatever reason. They can't all go to Castaway Cay because there isn't enough room at Castaway Cay for that many ships, that many times a week, right? So if you think the Dream is there twice a week, the Fantasy is there once a week, there's 3 days right off the top already shot just from 2 ships. There's simply not enough space at Castaway Cay to hold all the visits from all the ships that they could possibly make. So they need another Castaway Cay. They need a second island in the Caribbean. The other problem with Castaway Cay is it's at its highest, it is about 6 feet above sea level. If you look at, and Disney has a 99-year lease that ends around the year 2100. If you look at the most pessimistic sea level rise predictions through the year 2100, it says that we could expect a sea level rise increase of anywhere from 3 to 6 feet, meaning half the island could be underwater before Disney's lease is up for Castaway Cay. So they obviously need something that's higher and bigger. They've approached the Bahamas about developing 700 acres on Lighthouse Point, which is about 125 miles southeast of Castaway Cay. So it's not a private island, it's a peninsula. But besides having 700 acres to develop, it's also 50 feet above sea level. So Disney could lease it for 100 years and not have to worry about climate change in that particular aspect of it. So those discussions are still going on. But I think that is a good move for Disney. I think they're trying to work out now, like with the Bahamian government, what the government gets from Disney developing. So Disney's saying, look, if we develop it, we'll provide 120 jobs. The government came back and said, well, look, if anyone develops it, it'll be 120 jobs. So you're not adding anything that we couldn't get by just selling this to, Marriott. So that's where they're at now.
How many acres is Castaway Cay?
Is it 1,000? It's big, but like of the developed, it's like 50.
Right.
I think there's a couple of environmental groups kind of trying to chime in about Lighthouse Point too, but that'll be kind of fought out, I'm sure, with the Bahamian government and kind of pushed back, I'm sure, if the money speaks.
Yeah, if Disney's able to show that they will pump more money into the economy than the average development, then yeah, I think they can do it. But it's interesting that the government and the citizens are pushing back and saying, development and natural resources is our asset, and so we can't keep selling these things for rock bottom prices. We want to make sure that what we get is sustainable and so on.
Definitely. I was listening to another podcast and they were talking about LNG. I think Carnival is going to have the first ship that comes into Port Canaveral with LNG technology, and then Disney's right behind it. So I think, like you're saying, as they kind of test it out, get their feet wet behind that new technology, these ships are going to pretty much stay in Port Canaveral until they kind of get that figured out and they can move them elsewhere. And I'm pretty excited about the Wonder stand on the West Coast since I'm out in Portland. A couple years ago, it seemed like they had a hard time selling out some of the San Diego sailings, but now they're pretty much filled. And the Hawaii sailing, that's sold out like an hour into Silver Castaway Club members booking. So that was pretty quick.
I saw the Hawaii thing. Those were some interesting itineraries. I've done 2 Hawaii from Vancouver, 10 nights. And that was a good cruise. It was 5 straight sea days. I'd like to be on a bigger ship, I think, the next time I do that. Yeah, the Hawaii stuff sold out pretty quickly. Are they doing? Is there the possibility of doing back-to-back Alaska and Hawaii?
I think you can't, right?
Yeah, I think it goes from Hawaii, right?
It goes from San Diego up to Vancouver, Vancouver over to Hawaii, Hawaii back to Vancouver, and then it starts Alaska sailings after that.
So it would be Hawaii, Alaska.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you pack for that?
I know.
Well, and I think there's that issue with the Jones Act or whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah. There has to be an intermediate stop at a distant foreign port, right?
Right.
So maybe you have to take a week.
Vancouver.
Spend a week.
Sure.
Spend a week in Vancouver and then get on a ship. Get on a cruise.
I did look at the pricing for that. We actually had booked cruise on Norwegian on the Pride of America with my parents for 2019. And in all honesty, the Disney's pricing was pretty reasonable for the for the length of the trip compared to what, if you look at, I guess NCL's Pride of America, that is their highest. What am I looking for? The right word. That's the most expensive, one of the most expensive cruises you can go on with Norwegian. So, in all honesty, I think the pricing, dependent upon, obviously concierge was going to be up there, but like for an inside cabin or even an ocean view was actually pretty reasonable.
Really?
Yeah.
The Norwegian ship is so expensive because it has to be home ported in Hawaii.
Right.
So it, all the other ships register in, Malta or the Bahamas or other places so that they don't have to follow the U.S. labor laws.
Right. So.
So that explains that.
Yeah. So they fall under U.S. Labor laws and also U.S. How they get paid. So they're definitely they're definitely making more money than those who work on the Disney ships. So. Well, what other rumors? I heard you talk on a different show about some of the surveys that DCL has been putting out, and I was wondering if we could talk about that a little bit.
Right. So if you look at how long a ship exists, the Wonder is coming up on 20 years old, or it is 20 years old. I think most cruise lines keep their ships in rotation for 25 years. I think that's sort of like the average. So for Disney, if they're launching these ships in 2021, 2022, 2023, it's not unreasonable to expect that they will be in service through 2050. And one of the questions that Disney's trying to figure out is what technology infrastructure they need to build for on these ships to make sure that the services, the entertainment, and the amenities are relevant to people over the next 2 decades. And so they asked a series of questions for people who had been on Disney Cruise Lines before. And the survey question sort of asked, what kind of technology do you already use in your home that you would be comfortable using on this ship? So imagine Alexa, right, or a home speaker like a Siri or Cortana or Alexa. Would you be comfortable ordering food on the ship? Alexa, please bring me a pizza. Something. Are you comfortable doing that? But then they asked other different questions like, would you be comfortable ordering food? Would you be comfortable spending $100 or buying an item worth $100 from Alexa? Would you be comfortable buying something worth $1,000 on Alexa? And so I think they were looking for different opportunities there to either sell merchandise or high-end experiences or maybe even shore excursions, but booking them directly through Alexa rather than going to the Port Adventures desk or to the art auction or to the gallery or whatever. But the other thing that they could use it for is you could say things like, Alexa, I need more towels for my stateroom, right? So rather than having your room attendant check in whether you need service or not, you could just tell Alexa whether you need service or not, right? Mm-hmm. And that allows you to better distribute your staff's time over the people who need it. I think that was really interesting as well.
Why would they just go, and I guess they're just trying to figure it all out, but to an app like the Four Seasons, I think, has one. If you need towels or whatever, you just put it in there and say, yep, I need these things. And then, it gets brought to the room.
Yeah, this is a great question. And we're actually thinking about this question for touring plans as well. So just to go back on touring plans for a bit, I had the idea for an app that tells you how to minimize your wait in line at Disney World back in the mid-1990s. So more than 20 years ago. And that idea has sort of it took a while to implement, right? We really needed sort of iPhones and Amazon's cloud and stuff like that to get going. But the question that I've asked our staff this year is 20 years from now, how will we interact with technology as we go through the park? And I don't think we're all going to be looking at our phones. I definitely think that us walking around with our heads buried in our phones, not observing the real world, I think that's not a sustainable way to interact with technology. It's either going to be voice or built into your eyeglasses or something else, but it's not going to be 20 years from now. We're not going to be looking at our phones when we need information or when we need to interact with services wherever we're at. We're not going to be pulling phones out of our pocket. It's just not going to happen. It takes you out of the experience too much. So I think Disney's looking at it the same way. Right? 20 years from now, we're not going to be looking at our phones. So what's the next medium through which we interact with technology or with services? I do think it's probably voice, or at least voice is very promising at this point. So Disney's looking at the same question. And again, I think it's more relevant for Disney because I think each of these ships is over $1 billion in cost. They want to make sure that they get the technology infrastructure right the first time, because when you have to go back and retrofit a ship, number one, that takes a lot of time and a lot of money to do it, and number two, it's never as good as if you had planned for it to begin with. Does that make sense?
It does. I'm shaking my head again. I need to stop doing that.
I'm trying to figure out what kind of device you would wear besides Google Glass or something like that, where you could, kind of use that voice interaction to get things that you want as you're kind of moving around through the parks or whatever else. It'll be kind of interesting to see what comes up.
I've been playing around with wireless headphones for a while, so the Apple earbuds. And I think that's a good start. It does block some of the ambient noise around you. I don't know that I would want to wear them in a park all day, but if you could wear something like that where the battery lasted all day and it didn't take you out of the experience of being with your family in the park, so it was there when you needed it, but unobtrusive when you didn't need it. I think that's an interesting idea. And I think a lot of people, when I'm in New York, virtually everyone I see walking around the streets is wearing earphones. Number one, to listen to things, but number two, so they're just not bothered by all the noise around them. I think that's an interesting idea. Watches might be an option because it's easier to just look at your wrist rather than take your phone out of your pocket. And so maybe there's some sort of haptic response some sort of physical stimulus that tells you what to do or where to go or interact with the service somehow. I don't know. It's an interesting question. We've seen what Disney's done with the surveys about it. They're definitely thinking about it. We're thinking about it. I'll be excited to see what they come up with.
I'm already annoyed when I call the bank or call whoever and I have to use the automated system. I can't even imagine how that will work with all the different languages and accents. I guess we will see.
Yeah, and there's definitely some technology that they've got to work through on it, but I think it's, like I said, I think it's promising. So we'll see.
So another survey that came out also was on themed cruises. Did you get that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any thoughts on that? It was kind of interesting to listen. And I don't have them listed out here, a bunch of the ones that they had listed out. I'm not sure if you remember them, Len, but did any of those speak to you at all?
Yeah, so I think the survey is in part a response to the success of the Marvel and Star Wars Days at Sea. Mm-hmm. So Disney had sent out a survey asking which other movie or franchises you were interested in seeing. So, but not only movie and franchise, but they were also interested in. They asked questions like, "Are you interested in seeing a Walt Disney World at Sea day where we turn different parts of the ship into themed versions of your favorite attractions, in Walt Disney World? So we'll decorate the D Lounge like Haunted Mansion or something like that." That was interesting. They were checking at different film franchises for different theme days. So there's a Frozen theme day, there's a Princess theme day, Mickey and Minnie, obviously, or the Fab Five days. I think again they're just trying to figure out between now and 2021 or 2022 what's going to get people on the older ships.
That makes sense. Put them on there.
Because the itineraries aren't really changing that much. I mean, New Orleans is interesting, but they basically go in the same places that they've always gone to, with the same ships they've had for 20 years. So what's going to be the thing that attracts repeat visitors to the industry when Disney's charging prices that are much higher than average? Like what's going to be the thing that gets them on? And I think it's entertainment like that.
Well, I do know that Star Wars and the Marvel Day at Sea, everybody we talk to just love them. I mean, the whole day, the whole experience. So I know they're pretty popular. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what they come out with beyond that.
It was a super popular show. We talked to the crew. They love it. They said that the sailings are always full for them. They're able to charge top dollar for them. So again, I mean, if they don't have new itineraries and they don't have new ships, it's one of those things that they can do to make the cruises more appealing to people who have been on a few Disney cruises already.
Those are a couple of the surveys, I guess, that I had on our list. Any other rumors out there that we haven't talked about, Len, that you've been hearing lately about DCL and maybe the new ships or anything like that? So the one thing that I was trying to figure out on the new ships is how they're going to be configured differently than the Dream and the Fantasy. So like, if you compare a Disney ship to Royal or other lines in the class, Disney has fewer restaurants and fewer suites, right? It's very good at kids clubs and things like that, but a very large Royal ship has more than 20 restaurants. Disney's got 3 or 4, 3 or 5, right, depending on the ship that you're in. Right.
Is there a chance that there'll be something between 5 and 10 restaurants on the ship? Because the more dining experiences you have, the more people can spend on it. So that's one interesting question that I'm super excited to see when Disney starts revealing more details about the ship. I also think that if you look at what they just did on the Wonder, where they announced they're going to take some existing 4A cabins and convert them to Cat V.
For the second time,
yeah, exactly. So to convert them to concierge, it's a sign that there's more demand for suites and concierge than they currently have. So I'm interested in seeing what the configuration for that is going to be on the new ships. Will there be more suites and more concierge offerings? And if so, where will they be? Obviously, I expect the concierge lounges to be built into the ship now instead of retrofitted, like on the Magic and the Wonder. On the Magic and the Wonder, both of those concierge lounges have really good views, outside views. But on the Dream and the Fantasy, they don't. There are no windows.
Not a view to be had.
Not a view. Yeah. So if you like wood paneling, you're in heaven. So that's it. But then for the general cruise population, one of the things that we had heard was a possibility from somebody in one of the shipyards was this idea that they would carry on board with them a bunch of Sea-Doos and jet skis and things like that, to where you could basically park the ship off of an island somewhere. Like if you can't dock somewhere, you could park somewhere near an island and then just have the crew bring out all of this equipment and basically do your day at sea, but rent vehicles and things for them. So do your own little shore excursions from the ship instead of from a port. It would also be helpful for 2 reasons. One, if sea levels do rise, over the next 20 years, a lot of the current ports that Disney goes to would need to make accommodations, so they'd need to move. And some islands would simply be not dockable, right? They'd either be underwater or undergoing through their own, repairs to figure out how out of dock ships. So the ability to sort of like carry your own port excursions on the ship, it has an appeal from an economic perspective for Disney. Basically, just park anywhere and bring out the pontoon boats and the jet skis and the scuba equipment, and we'll just do our thing here in the middle of the ocean.
You know, I was in San Diego a couple years ago on a layover, and there was a huge ship down. It wasn't a cruise ship, it's smaller than a cruise ship, but kind of like one of those mega yachts. And we saw two people on jet skis just go busting through the bay, and they pulled up next to it. This huge door opened up on the side of the ship, and like one of those little arms came out and pulled the jet skis in. So, yeah, I could definitely see them doing something like that. That'd be kind of cool.
Yeah, a lot of appeal to it for Disney too. I mean, they can do a lot with it. So yeah, I expect to see something like that. I wouldn't be surprised. It may be a little too adventurous for Disney right now, but people are talking about the idea. So,
well, let's talk about the 2019 guide, the unofficial guide coming out for Disney Cruise Line. I think that hits the shelves in Amazon next month. What's new? What's new in that, or what are we going to see in that that's a little bit new for people?
So we're covering all of the new 2019 itineraries, obviously. So we've got information on all the new ports to the extent that we know what the excursions might be. We know that too. But for the ports, we're telling people for each port, we're giving them a little bit of history on the ports, what they can expect in terms of getting to and from the ship, what the weather is like, so how to dress and how to pack, and also like what the popular things to buy and the popular foods are. So it's a little mini guide, to the city for each of those. For some of the itineraries, we've got our walking tours back. So for Barcelona and Oslo and Nassau, we've got walking tours to share sort of like the highlights of these. Yeah, so we've actually walked them ourselves. Nassau's kind of interesting because there's still State Department warnings about safety on the ship. So I think we're still telling people like stay on the ship unless you absolutely need to. But eventually that'll be lifted and we'll go back and we can walk around Nassau again. We also updated our pricing trends. So if you're looking to buy a stateroom for a cruise, we did an analysis of all of the cruise fares that we were able to collect every day for every cabin on every cruise for every itinerary going back into like 2014. And sort of do an analysis about when the best time to purchase the cruise fare is. And it's actually changed a little bit over the last couple of years. If you want to talk about it, we can talk about it.
Yeah, definitely. Let's do it.
Always.
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, Royal Caribbean started this thing called pricing integrity. Are you familiar with it?
Mm-hmm. It's the idea that when you book, the price is always going to go up in the future.
Yeah, the idea that there would never be last-minute discounts. So they started in 2015, and they actually came out and told all of their customers, we've been discounting cruises at the last minute for a decade. We're not going to do it anymore. The best price you're going to get is the day that the cruise is announced, and the prices will go up, slowly but steadily every day after that. So book as early as you can, you'll get the best price. And nobody believed them, actually. Like it was a game of chicken for 2 years. But Royal held tight, and they didn't vary from the strategy. And eventually, in early 2017. People started to believe them. And so people started to book earlier. So not only did they get the lowest fares, but Royal was able to, have more certainty about what their revenue was. So Disney's actually started doing the same thing a couple of years ago. We saw that for certain cruises, Mediterranean, Alaska, and then even like the Bahamian cruises, the prices generally went up. But if you waited until like 60 or 45 or 30 days before the cruise, you could still get a deal on some of them. Like the prices would drop. That's no longer the case. So if you look at like the pricing for a typical 4-night Bahamian cruise on the Dream, it goes up almost at a straight line. For a Cat 4, if you book it more than 450 days in advance, the lowest price is somewhere around $5,800. The highest price for the highest cabin, for the highest deck, and that is somewhere between around $6,000. And they only go up. Like if you were to buy it like the day before the cruise goes, it's somewhere around $6,900. And the lowest price is definitely on the day it comes out. And there's a little bit of wiggle room, but there's not a lot. The price is basically a diagonal line going up and to the right. So Disney's doing the pricing integrity for Bahamian cruises. And it's similar for Western Caribbean cruises on the Fantasy. So they start off, if you're able to book 400 and 450 days in advance or whatever, cheapest price is $8,500. It never gets that low again. If you want a higher deck, it's $9,000, and that price never gets that low again. But we still do see for the Western Caribbean, so the prices go up until
the
about
Eastern, maybe, or is it the Western? Because I think you just said the Western.
So Western, yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry for the Western. The prices do go up until about 60 days before your trip. They do drop a little bit after that, so they peak at around $10,500 on the Fantasy, but then they drop from day 60 to day 10 before your cruise, they dropped down by about $1,000 down to $9,500. That's still more than you would pay by about $500 to $1,000 if you had booked it in advance. But like the absolute worst time to book is like around 70 to 60 days in advance. Those are peak prices. Then they drop a little bit after that. The other interesting thing is, and this is going to sound horrible, but if you look at, we track the price of the average Disney Dream 4-night itinerary, and we tracked it since 2014, right? Mm-hmm. The price for 2019 over summer vacation. So let me go back. In 2014, if you wanted to take a 4A cabin on a 4-night itinerary on the Dream, you were paying $4,000, right at $4,000 for that trip. And then the next year it went up by a couple.
That's the family veranda, right?
4A, yeah, it's the deluxe Ocean View family veranda, yeah. And this is 2 adults, 2 kids. So you're paying about basically $1,000 per person for the cruise. That's 2014, and the prices went up a little bit in 2015 and basically stayed there for 2016. In 2017, the price went from $4,000 to $4,800. Last year, it went to $5,100.
Wow.
And then this year it went to $4,100. Next year, the prices start at $6,600. So the price has gone up 50% in 5 years. Basically, you could have 1.5 cruises in 2014 for every cruise that you have now, and it's the same. It's similar throughout the year. So starting in like Easter, starting in like mid-April, the prices for those cabins are drastically higher every single day through, I would say, like end of August. And then at the end of August, they sort of like start going back down into normal territory where the cruise is under, $3,600. But for summer, for holidays, starting on Easter, they're charging a super premium, like literally 50% to be on that ship. Astounding.
It's amazing.
Is that when we say thanks Shanghai, thanks Star Wars Land?
And the thing is, they're filling it too. I mean, if you look at the numbers that the passenger numbers out of Port Canaveral, I mean, it's down like, it's plus or minus like 10 people per cruise. So yeah, if you charge 50% more and almost have the same number of people, that's a good deal
for them.
It's a good deal for them. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah.
Maybe not for us.
That's why I'm a little hopeful that the new ships hope to drive prices down a little bit. We'll see.
Well, the new ships will have crazy prices, and then hopefully the other ones will have more normal prices. At least that's what I think.
I hope. We'll see.
Did you book for 2020?
No, I haven't seen anything interesting yet.
And what about New Orleans? Did you guys know about New Orleans at all before it was announced? Or maybe you can answer that.
I don't think we did. I didn't know about it, but I am not the ultimate source of that information. So I'm sure there are probably people that we know that sort of had a hint of it.
Because they have to get out there quick now, right? And do just all the New Orleans information so that it can at least, I guess they don't need to be in the 19 book, right? Because it has a whole other year.
Yeah, they've got a year and change. I mean, basically right now they needed to do some marketing material for it, but to do the shore excursions, the add-ons, day before, day after, or whatever, we've got time to do that. I mean, they can definitely offer those later on.
That would actually be a really cool one for ABD, Adventures by Disney, to add on in New Orleans. There's just some amazing food experiences you could have down there and whatnot with music.
Oh, exactly. And I think that's part of the appeal of New Orleans versus Galveston. I mean, what's the add-on for Galveston? No, really, it's true. I mean, it's
literally nothing.
You could ABD, in New Orleans for 3 days.
For sure.
But you could do a few things there.
Well, as we close out the show, then, Len, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you on the web?
So I am Len at touringplans.com. Also on Twitter at Len Testa. You can listen to my podcast with Jim Hill on DisneyDish.bandcamp.com or on iTunes.
Well, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Len, for coming on. We really appreciate it. It's always fun to talk to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. And thanks, Christy, for having me, too. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. All the best.
All right. Thanks. See you guys.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show today. Once again, I really want to thank Len for coming on and taking time out of his busy schedule to talk to Christy and I. He's such a wealth of knowledge about the whole Disney community and especially Disney Cruise Line. It's always a pleasure to talk to him. And if you haven't checked out the unofficial guide to Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney World, and Disneyland, make sure you do so. Those are just amazing guidebooks, and the 2019 version of the unofficial guide to Disney Cruise Line is coming out here next month in November. And tomorrow is Halloween. I want to wish everybody out there just a fun and safe time out there celebrating out with all the ghouls and goblins out there for Halloween. So happy Halloween, everybody.
If you would like to get in touch with Christy and I between now and our next show, you can do so on Facebook or Twitter. You can reach me at DCL Podcast on Facebook and also DCL Podcast on Twitter. You can always find Christy over at packyourpixiedust.com, also on Facebook at packyourpixiedust, and on Twitter at packyurpixiedust. And if you are heading out on your next trip between our next show, all of us here at the DCL Podcast would like to wish you fair winds and safe travels as you head out on your next adventure. Once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.